This is IES Gridiron Season. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live here via MixLR. Here live with Mr. Tony Pauline, and also I am live with my good buddy here, Nick Trist. What's going on, Nick?
Not too much, James. Good to hear from you, buddy. I'm doing great.
Good. So as I said, very special guest on the line, draft guru, draft insider from draftinsider.net to be exact, the head man in charge over that way. We're not gonna hold him up too long. We're gonna get right into it and fire into the questions. Mr. Pauline, or should we say Tony, how are you?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me.
All right, so that said, my first question, or actually, I'm gonna pass it off to Nick. He's gonna fire away at the first question. I'm gonna let him do the honors. So, Nick, do your thing, man.
All right, Tony. Well, we'll start right at the top, man. The big question on everybody's list. Houston's officially on the clock. We're getting close to that time. What are you hearing? What are your sources saying? What do you think Houston's going to do at number one overall?
Well, I mean, it's really undecided at this point in time. I've stated all along, I think they're going to go Blake Bortles. A lot of people think it's Jadeveon Clowney. I'm going to be a man of my word and stick to my guns from what I said in January with Blake Bortles. I think, the pessimist would say, well, they're in a tough situation because if they take Bortles over Jadeveon Clowney and Clowney meets his upside potential and, plays to those Hall of Fame type of skills that he has, they're going to be known forever as the team that, passed on Jadeveon Clowney. Or if they take Clowney and they pass up on Blake Bortles and he turns out to be the quarterback that a lot of people, including myself, think he could be, they're in a, depending on your point of view, they're either in a great position or a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I think it's going to come down really to the final days before they make their ultimate decision. But I think it'll either be Bortles or Clowney.
Awesome. What do you think there's a possibility they could trade back and Broyd will still be there for him? Maybe if they made a move with, say, Atlanta from 6 to come up and take a run at Clowney. Do you think Broyles would still be on the board? Do you think there's heavy interest from other teams picking in, right ahead of 6 who might snag Broyles up, or do you think that's something they could look into?
I think if they move down with Atlanta, I'd be shocked if Bortles is still available. You got Cleveland there who needs a quarterback. You got Jacksonville who needs a quarterback. I mean, there are enough teams. I don't think Bortles is going to be on the board very long. With Teddy Bridgewater falling, with Johnny, so many questions about Johnny Manziel. Bortles is not the finished product. He's not a franchise quarterback. He's not in the realm of, say, an Andrew Luck, but he's the best quarterback in this draft as far as I'm concerned, and he has been since January. And there are enough teams at the top of the draft that really are quarterback needy that if they fell in his laps, they'd swipe him up.
I got one more for you before I shoot it over to James. So Jadeveon Clowney, what's your take on him? I know you've probably written extensively about Clowney at this point, but there still continues to be questions about his work ethic, a little bit of motivational concerns. Is he going to perform after he gets that paycheck? Do you think those are being overblown at this point, or do you think those are some real legitimate concerns?
Well, I mean, there are often legitimate concerns with highly rated prospects, in part because, for a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, who's been so much bigger and so much athletic throughout his career from high school through college, I mean, things come easy to him. And, he hasn't had to work hard because he's just such a natural. Now, what do I feel about him? Well, for more than a year, I've been saying that Clowney's the best defensive prospect to enter the draft since Bruce Smith in the mid-1980s. He's got immense physical skills. He is a disruptor. People said, and I think rightly so, that, he turned it down a notch last season because he was playing not to get hurt. And I understand both sides of the coin because had he been able to enter the 2013 draft, he would have been the first pick there. And he saw what happened to his teammate Marcus Lattimore. So I mean, I can understand why people would be upset that he didn't play hard. I can also understand why, Clowney was protecting himself and playing not to get injured. But the fact is if you watch the film, opposing teams were double teaming him, they were tripping him, they were holding him, they were game planning around him, which is what they're going to have to do at the next level. It's difficult to say. My hopes are is that Clowney is taking all this criticism and he's basically going to use it to be resolute moving forward and use it as, sort of motivation to really work hard and meet his upside potential, which is absolutely immense. I don't think anyone other than someone who has a crystal ball that's been right can tell what's going to what's going to happen in the future. But the fact is, this is when you break it down, Clowney is far and away the best prospect in this year's draft.
All right. Well, James, you got one for Tony?
Yeah, good stuff. And for those of you just joining, real quick, just to clarify, we are on the lines with the head man in charge of DraftInsider.net, Tony Pauline. And Tony, my question is, as I previously stated, we give a Jags a lot of coverage on our site, being that we're based in Jax. So that into consideration, my next question is about what they could do with the third overall pick. From what I'm hearing, it likely won't be a quarterback, which my next question will be on, or one of my next questions will be on. But from your sources and from what you're hearing, what do you think they would do? Do you think they would go with a guy like, per se, Khalil Mack, being that Clowney will likely be off the board by then? Or do you think they might go with an offensive weapon like Sammy Watkins? Or it's even been rumors out there that Dave Caldwell wants to trade out and acquire more picks.
Well, I think you first of all, you have to see what happens ahead of them. I mean, they probably won't go quarterback, but I think if Blake Bortles is there, it's an enticing pick for a variety of reasons. I mean, sort of a hometown guy. He's got the skills to be a franchise type of quarterback, so I think that may change the conversation. I think Khalil Mack is definitely an option. The fact is he is a developing linebacker. He's a guy that if you watched him the past 3 years, as I have, I mean, he was a terrific pass rusher at defensive end as a sophomore at Buffalo. Started to do more standing up over tackle as a junior in 2012, and just really blossomed last year into an all-around linebacker. And I think a head coach like Gus Bradley, a defensive-minded coach like Gus Bradley, Khalil Mack is sort of the dream type of player, as would be a Jadeveon Clowney. I think a trade down is also very likely. I'd be mildly surprised if they took Sammy Watkins, considering that, even though he's a bust and he hasn't lived up to expectations, Justin Blackmon was a very early pick, and this is a deep draft at the receiver positions. Yes, they could use some weapons, but they could come back in rounds 2, 3, or 4, even round 5, and get a good receiver that I think could help them if they don't go offensive center in round 2. So I think what you got to wait and see who's on the board, who is available to the Jaguars. If Clowney and Bortles are somehow the first two players off the board, if St. Louis takes more, St. Louis trades down, which I've been hearing for the longest time they want to do. Khalil Mack would be a good selection for him. Trading down would always be is always a good move for a team that has a lot of holes like the Jaguars. They're going to have to wait and see who's on the board and who's available to them.
Right. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's just a matter of them watching, their division rivals and the Texans, and what will happen at that Rams spot, as that's been a hot spot for trade talks. So my next question is on the quarterbacks, actually, as I said, and reportedly, according to Sports Illustrated, the Jags are really high on Jimmy Garoppolo, from what I hear. They've also scheduled a workout with Teddy Bridgewater, and they had earlier brought him in to basically speak with him and whatnot. But now it's going to be a workout. That said, who is the quarterback in the entire draft that you feel is the most likely to land in Jacksonville?
Well, I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, I could see Bortles in round 1. I could see maybe Mettenberger or Jack Mettenberger of LSU, maybe Jimmy Garoppolo in round 2, assuming they don't go offensive center, because I think if Weston Richburg of Colorado State, the top center in this year's draft, is available to them in round 2, that's a direction they would go, because it's a very thin class of centers. And you saw that they made a big offer to Alex Mack, which eventually went nowhere. I think you can't discard anybody. I don't think they're going to take Manziel. I don't know that Bridgewater's in the conversation. If you're looking at later round guys, Jeff Matthews is a possibility. Tom Savage of Pittsburgh is a name that's gaining steam. So I just think what will happen is they'll go through the process, and when if they don't take a quarterback in round 1, round 2, they'll look at the highest player on their board. when you're a team like Jacksonville and you have so many needs, you want to fill those needs, but you don't want to bypass top players to fill those needs. And if Weston Richburg, of the center from Colorado State, is a higher rated player on your board than, say, a Jimmy Garoppolo, you may have a big need at quarterback, but you also have a need at center. You don't want to pass up a higher rated player that can help you immediately just for the quarterback.
Right. And it's funny you bring up Weston Richburg. That's a guy that I'm personally high on. I like what I seen in him on film. And initially it was said that he might be a third round pick, but I don't think he's gonna be around there. And you're right. If he is there, they definitely have something to think about there in taking him, as there isn't much value in the center position behind him. So that said, we're gonna go back to Nick with the next question.
All right, Tony. Well, while we got you on the show, I'd love to ask you a question about a program we cover a lot here at IES, and that's the Clemson Tigers. Could you give us a brief rundown of their available draft prospects this year and your evaluation of them?
I like Sammy Watkins. I think he's a good receiver. I just don't think he's a special talent. He's not a Calvin Johnson type of talent at the receiver position. I think he's being slightly overrated. I don't think there is a big difference or a huge gap, or the gap is not as wide between he and, say, the second receiver on my board, Mike Evans, as a lot of people will think. I do think he's an NFL-ready type of receiver who can play in a variety of systems, very effective running after the catch, dependable hands. He's going to be the first receiver off the board. Can't see the St. Louis Rams taking him at 2. Can't see the Jaguars taking him at 3. Really can't see the Cleveland Browns taking him at 4, so maybe he ends up 5 with the Oakland Raiders. Never been a high on Taj Boyd. It's been well documented. I've got Clemson fans who want to burn my house down, but, Taj Boyd was a very good college quarterback. He's very athletic. He's got a live arm, but he needs a lot of work from the ground up with his fundamentals. He's not an accurate quarterback, and I'm not talking about statistical accuracy. I'm talking about, if you watch Taj Boyd, receivers are consistently, for the most part, slowing up in their routes, waiting for the ball to get to them. They're reaching vertically. They're extending over their head. They're out of balance. Their body's contorted to catch his throws for the most part, which leads to a loss of opportunity running after the catch. And in the NFL, it usually leads to a lot of incomplete passes or interceptions, or you're going to get your receiver killed. So do I think Taj Boyd gets drafted? Yes, but I think it's going to be in the last day in the later rounds. It was a shame to see what happened with Brandon Thomas because he was moving up draft boards. He could have ended up in the second round. I mean, a guy that a lot of people, including myself, projected to guard, but in the pre-draft process in January at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, he showed all the skills necessary to stay at the left tackle spot. So I think he's going to go from a second, third round choice to the fourth, fifth round. Rashad Breeland is an interesting case. I mean, he's not really fast, but he's got that size that teams love today at the cornerback position. And, he's got long arms, and people have told me that, he may not be the fastest, but his length and his ability to get vertical and his long arms will help him at the next level knock away passes and defend throws. So Breeland could be a surprise pick in the second round area. Martavis Bryant of the receiver, I think, is a guy who's going to go somewhere in the fourth round. Terrific size, terrific speed, doesn't always play to his 40 time. But he's a developing guy, and I think he did well as a number 2 to Sammy Watkins. They've got some other guys that I think are going to be solid undrafted free agent pickups. Quadrant Christian, the linebacker, I know he kind of fell out of sorts there and really didn't play much, but I could see him as an 8th linebacker, special teams player at the next level. Roderick McDowell, again, a special teams guy who can make it as a 4th running back at the next level. Spencer Shuey, again, not a great athlete, but a very good football player, an undrafted guy that, is going to have to, if he makes it in the NFL, will be as an 8th linebacker and special teams player.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not one of those Clemson fans who holds it against you for your view on Taj Boyd. I think as time will tell, Clemson fans will realize, Taj was a great player for us, but he did have a lot of weapons at his disposal, and I'm not sure if he always maximized that. And you're right, a lot of those completion numbers are inflated. I mean, Clemson runs 5, 6, 7 screen passes a game, so right there. We're talking about lateral completions that are inflating those numbers. And I know we're getting short on time here, so I'll go ahead and ask you the one question that I definitely for sure wanted to get in. And that's in all your years of covering the draft, all the players you've evaluated, who's the one you still scratch your head the most over because they didn't pan out?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, there's not just one. You go back to Tony Mandarich. When I watched him at Michigan State, I just thought he was going to be an absolute beast, and he turned out to be a complete bust. You move forward, Vernon Golston, who was selected early by the New York Jets. I mean, he was one of the greatest busts of all time. I think as far as the NFL draft is concerned, but just, finished out his contract, did nothing with the New York Jets and never surfaced. Obviously, you got to mention Ryan Leaf in that category, because Leaf had the physical skills, but he was just a very immature person and couldn't handle a lot of things. So, you go down through the list, and there's there are the obvious ones, and there's definitely more than one.
Awesome. Well, Tony, we know you got a busy schedule, man. We appreciate you coming on. If there's anything you want to let our fans know, let our listeners know, go ahead. But feel free to go ahead and take that off there. And we, once again, really appreciate it, Tony.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Tony. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Tony Pauline of DraftInsider.net. Draft guru in my book, guy I really respect his opinion. Glad to have him on. So Nick, we're gonna roll it on over to you as you want to go into a brief break here and then come back at it for part 2.
No, we're good. Let's keep it rolling.
You want to keep it rolling? All right. Well, let's keep it rolling then. Man. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been trying to, let the others in IES have their takes and not hog the spotlight. So I'm gonna let Nick take it from here for part 2 of Gridiron Season. So there you go, buddy. Have at it, man.
All right. Well, first, I just want to say, man, I think that was a great interview. I hope our listeners really enjoyed a guy of that level of expertise coming on and giving his insight. We're getting really close to draft time, and that's a hot name to book in this business, and we got him. So I mean, that's a credit to you, James, man. I know you took the initiative on that, and I'm sure our listeners are definitely grateful for that.
Man. I mean, I'm surprised that he came on, man, but lo and behold, he did. So shout outs to Tony again for that, man.
Absolutely, and that's draftinsider.net for everyone out there. Draftinsider.net is where you could find all of Tony's latest work.
And at Tony Pauline too is where you can follow him on Twitter, by the way.
For sure, a great follow. So just a couple more things I wanted to get into, get your opinion on, James, while I had you here today. The first is a topic that's kind of surfacing around this time of year, and that's the topic of risers and fallers, guys moving up draft boards, guys moving down. Seems to be like a game of dominoes at this point.
Right.
In the process. So, who's some guys on your radar? Some guys you've seen shooting up draft boards, and some guys maybe who are sinking down.
Well, the first guy I want to bring to attention, of course, is Teddy Bridgewater, who's falling for some reason, and I don't quite understand why. When you look at his skill set, you know what I'm saying? He does the NFL things correctly. He reads defenses. He's a smart kid. He might be a little bit on the quiet side, which is one of the knocks I've heard about him. And also, some people kind of knock the level of competition, but he's played against some top tier people. But I think mostly of all, it boils down to his frame and, how his weight fluctuates. And people are, they're kind of scared to take him, or they're kind of scared to put him high on their board, being that he has that small frame. He's like 213 last time I checked. I don't know, he might have picked up some weight, but he's maxed out at the most, if I recall, I might be wrong, at like 218, and that probably scares some teams, which it shouldn't, because I don't see anybody scared to take Johnny Manziel because of his size. When you mention him, it's all about his playmaking abilities and his potential. But you mentioned Teddy Bridgewater, all of a sudden it's all about size. So I don't really understand that, but he's one of the fallers. Hopefully, if he does fall into the 20s, the Jags take Sammy Watkins, which we asked Tony about, and he said he thinks is unlikely. But I think if he falls into the 20s and the Jags take Watkins at 1, I would just hope and pray that they traded up to the 20s and got him. They'll probably have to jump somebody like the Vikings, or should I say the Browns, I'm sorry, they have another first round pick from the Colts for Richardson. So
26,
that's
I believe, right?
Right. They would have to jump somewhere in front of them, most definitely, just to be safe. But that's me. Or they just could take him at 3, which, I mean, some people would consider a reach. But he's very high on my board, in my opinion.
Well,
so in terms of...
Well, I'm
go
gonna
right
have
ahead, man.
yeah, I'll disagree with you a little bit on Bridgewater there. I mean, he hasn't necessarily fallen down my draft board. He just never started quite as high as some
Right.
other people may have had him. I've always had concerns about one, his frame. He's 23 at this point, and he's still coming in about right at 200 pounds. I think that's a little light. I don't know how much more frame you can add to a 23-year-old's body at this point, and him still use the same athleticism he's always had. And also, I don't think I'm always leery of guys who haven't seen the competition level that they can expect in the NFL on a regular basis. Louisville, he played a cupcake schedule. I mean, you can't really hold that against him. It's not his fault. He doesn't make the schedule. I understand that, but it still makes me evaluate him with a grain of salt. And the lack of a signature moment. I mean, when you think about Manziel and even Brotles to an extent. When they went down there and beat Baylor this year, they had those moments where you sat back and you watched and you said, "Wow, this guy could, this is a next level talent. This is a guy who you can hitch your wagon to in the NFL and win games." And I know Bridgewater's been a pretty high prospect for a while now, but I just never got that vibe from him. So that's definitely one of our prospects we didn't see eye to eye to on this year. But hey, that's what makes the show entertaining, right?
Right. And about his frame real quick, like, to me, it's not an issue because, like, at Louisville, he showed he was tough as nails. Like, that's what I really like about him is despite his numerous injuries, I know it was at one point in time, I think he broke his wrist. That was in the Florida game, maybe. He played through that, and, like, Florida was laying it on him. Like, I'm talking about John Bostic. I think that was John Bostic that laid that big time hit on him. Like, they really, like, they brought the heat, and it didn't faze him. He sat in the pocket just like he wasn't hurt at all and just picked them apart. I mean, and people will say that you keep bringing up the Florida film. It's not so much about how he picked them apart, but it was about his toughness when people question his frame. This is a guy that went up against one of the toughest defenses in college football. Say what you want about Will Muschamp and the Gators, but one thing you cannot question is their defense and their toughness on defense. And they brought the heat on Bridgewater, and he answered the call. But that's just me, man, personally.
I got you. Well, on this topic of risers and fallers, I'll tell you the one whose name I keep hearing, and Tony even mentioned it. And he seemed to share the opinion that it's pretty common out there, and that's Tom Savage. And I got to tell you, not only from watching film on the guy, but also just from observations throughout the season.
Right.
I'm not seeing it. I'm not impressed. He's not, he's a guy who started his career at Rutgers, transferred there after he had some issues with the coaching staff, I believe, possibly had lost his job. So he transferred to Pitt. I mean, he had from all statistical measures, a pretty average year. The lone exception was against Duke, who actually had a pretty good season for Duke Blue Devil football standards this year, but he actually finished that game with 6 touchdowns. So I mean that really inflated his stats. If you were to take away the Duke game, the rest of them would equal. He went for about 2,400 yards, 14 TDs, 9 picks, and right at 60% completion percentage. I mean, just from a statistical standpoint, I don't understand where all this hype is getting generated. I know he's a 6'5" guy, and anytime, I mean, for crying out loud, people are still talking about Logan Thomas having a chance to play in the NFL, and he was one of the least effective quarterbacks I've seen in the ACC in a long time. I just cannot see that guy translating, but for whatever reason, he's still on these radars. So there's some guys I just don't get, man. I just don't, I don't know how you feel about Savage. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I mean, have you been hearing the same type of stuff?
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of hype on him, and I haven't seen a lot of film on him recently, but I remember watching some games throughout the season. I think it was one on NBC where pick play. It might have been Notre Dame
Well, yeah,
or I
if I was on
forgot.
NBC, it had to be Notre Dame.
Right, right. And I mean, he showed flashes, but he didn't show anything worthy of a top 3 pick. I mean, not I'm sorry, a top 3 round type pick in my opinion. And that's just me. I got to go back and reevaluate him. I know the Patriots were high on him reportedly, and they're looking at him to possibly be the next quote unquote Tom Brady guy that they may can get in the late round. It just depends on like how people value him. Like you said, some people got him high on their boards, but just me personally, upon initial impression, like I say, I got to go back and watch him some more. I don't see anything like top 60 or top 120 or nowhere in that ballpark. I think he should go personally, just off of the little film that I have seen on him, about in the 5th round, 4th at the most. So
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
me though.
to give everybody a sense of how much he shot up draft boards. I don't quote me on this, but I want to say it was CBS whose rankings I saw yesterday that had him at 51 overall and the 5th best quarterback.
Oh
Which
wow.
I don't think I had when we did our list a couple episodes ago of our top 10 quarterbacks. I know he wasn't on any of our lists, so it's crazy that in just a short time they saw something on film or somehow his agent did a good enough job to get his name shot up those lists. But like I said, man, some things will remain a mystery. That's it, man.
Right,
Let's get
right.
into our last topic today. Getting close to one to wrap it up here.
Okay.
So I wanted to talk today, man. Kind of an interesting topic, I thought. Do now when we all go through this process and we run through mock drafts in our head and we see scenarios, we get excited about players. Sometimes we also get excited about those players' potential fits. Just the possibility of them landing in certain spots that just gets you excited or would be energizing for a fan base or just would really work strategically, and you think they would be really effective. Do you have any situations like that, man? Any places where you got guys hoping to land in certain spots?
Yeah, I mean, one that comes to mind that me and you kind of talked about is even though there's injury concerns with him, is Lewis Nix to Jacksonville because they need a nose tackle. He's from Jacksonville, and I mean, a lot of people might not know about him that watch college football conventionally, but he's a fairly popular figure in the Notre Dame community. I think he even has like his own YouTube channel where he does all of that craziness from. But yeah, that is a guy that I want to pair up and see in Jacksonville. But like I say, there's the injury concerns, and they gotta really do their homework there. But I think I would really like to see him because there is a need at nose tackle, despite what people think. Roy Miller was beat up a good portion of the season, and from what I hear, he might have had some knee issues. I think, if I recall, some tendonitis in the knee. And knee issues don't go away; they just don't magically go away. And they lingered the whole year. I don't think things are going to change this year. Once he gets to playing and putting weight on that knee, it's probably going to start to bother him again, and it might be an issue going throughout the season, pretty much.
Yeah, and Lewis Nix is a guy to me who actually, if you can get him in round two, represents a lot of value. I mean, this is a guy who the film's out there. I mean, there's moments, especially last year by Notre Dame's run to the title game, where I mean he dominated. I mean, he was a dominant force. He was unblockable. Everybody was saying this guy was a surefire first round talent, possible first defensive tackle taken. And he's seen his stock slide. And there's I don't think it's so much injury concerns as I don't think it'll turn out to be so much injury concerns, I should say, as it will be. I think him and a couple of those guys who returned from that team after such a crazy run, and, an emotional year, and I think they've kind of phoned it in, and they kind of showed up out of shape and not ready to go, and kind of bought into their own hype a little bit. So you hope with time they can mature. I mean, we're still talking about young kids. That's it happens, man. It happens a lot. So I mean, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. You hope it's something they can work out. But I mean, as far as athleticism and football skills, I mean, we've seen it from this guy on tape. He can do it. He has dominated. There's been times where he was unblockable. So anytime you can get those kind of athletes, I'll take them on my team, especially if it's in round two, and then especially like you've said, if the fit, matches as well as it does, being a hometown guy. One of those scenarios for me that I've really been hoping for. I've got two. I mean, they're also my two most surefire locks of this whole process. Available this year. And I guess it's kind of for selfish reasons, because I just want to see these guys' talent maximized because I think it really could be something special in the league. That's Jadeveon Clowney. And the fit I'd like to see him in is one he alluded to himself. I mean, he said, he would love for the Falcons to be able to work a deal and trade up to come get him if he doesn't fall to
Right.
6. He's not from Georgia, but he's from the upstate South Carolina, a couple hours down the road, so real
Yeah, that's
familiar
pretty
with the
much
area.
Georgia, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're right there. I mean, 85, runs you right to it. And I think, schematically it would be a great fit. They need a pass rusher. He's probably the best, Pauline told us earlier today that he said he's the best defensive prospect they've evaluated since Lawrence Taylor came out. I mean, that's some pretty high
Right,
praises.
That is, man. Especially
so,
coming from Tony, man.
Yeah, he's not like a sensationalist. He's not just saying stuff like that. He's got a good reputation. He's not just, putting that out there if he doesn't truly
Right. He
believe
ain't
it,
just
so.
blowing smoke type of deal.
For sure. So I'd love to see that fit. I think it could energize the city of Atlanta kind of the way that the Michael Vick trade did when they made that move way back when. Also, the other one is Sammy Watkins. That's my guy. I've watched him since the first snap he took at Clemson. Always knew it was a special talent. I'm glad to see that he'll get to realize his dreams here pretty soon and make an impact and be one. The first receiver taken off the board is a great honor and possibility going top 5. I mean, he earned it. He worked for it. But I want to make sure he succeeds. I know I can't ensure it, but I hope it. There's some spots I don't want him to land, particularly Oakland at 5. But I think the one that's most intriguing and has actually been rumored pretty heavily would be for Detroit to move up. Finally give Calvin Johnson, an answer to help him out with some of the double coverages and triple coverages he's seen in Detroit. So it would be great to see those two guys paired up out wide. Not the biggest Matt Stafford fan in the world, but I mean, him with those weapons and Reggie Bush, I mean, I think it'd be something you have to tune into every week. So those would be my two scenarios I think would be good for the league, be good for the players, and be good for the teams.
Right. Hey, I would love to see Clowney up in Atlanta personally. Like I said, I'm a secondary Falcons fan. I grew up watching the Falcons, watching Vic and all of those guys. I'll go back as far as saying the Jamal Anderson days, man. I used to watch them when they had Dan Reeves. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that, but me personally, I'm just a little scared about, Clowney's work ethic. Even though, Tony cleared a little bit of that up for us, saying that, he was triple team, which I agree with, and he was protecting injury, which is, I wouldn't blame him after seeing what happened to his teammate in Lattimore. But I think that, if he goes to the right coach and the right coach gets in his head, like Mike Smith will, Mike Smith is pretty good in terms of being a personnel guy. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good match. I would like to see that personally, and I would certainly agree with you there.
All right, man. Well, I think that about does it for us, man. It was a good show. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to what we got in the works, man, to what comes next. I hope everybody else out there is as well. As always, look for us here. Look for us on Twitter at Nick Trist, IES.
And also at IES_done. The site, InsideEdgeSports.wordpress.com. Shout outs to Zach. Shout outs to Phil as well. We'll have them back soon enough. Working on some big things here. Nick, as I put on Facebook, for those of you who follow, Nick's been working hard with the sound engineering for the podcast. We're trying to up our game in that department. So he's going to put out the final edit of this about tonight, right? Later tonight, 9-ish.
Maybe earlier than that, man. I'm gonna get to work on it as soon as we finish up here. But yeah, we can say 9 for sure, 9 at the latest. Everybody can look forward to a final cleared up mastered audio recording of this. by this
Right.
evening.
Yeah. Yep. So if any mishaps went on and what have you in the podcast, we'll have those all cleared up and we'll have it posted. We have a SoundCloud account, both of us, Nick and I. We'll link those on Twitter, Facebook, on the website on Inside Edge Sports itself. So good show, man, and we're gonna go ahead and hang up, man. I appreciate Tony Pauline coming on once again, and you all have a good one.
All right, James. Take care, buddy. See you next time.
All right, man. See you.